To the Point with your host, News Channel 5's Kelly Dunn.
He is the only Democrat left in Florida holding a statewide office, and now Republicans are gearing up to defeat Senator Bill Nelson. One of those candidates is Adam Hasner, a Republican from Boca Raton, who served in the Florida House for 6 years, reaching the rank of Republican Majority Leader. And we thank you very much, Adam Hasner, for coming in today and being on our show. We appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
Let's get to the point. In your many years as a state legislator, what can you point to and say, okay, this is what I accomplished? And what are you going to then bring to the U.S. Senate if you're elected?
Well, I think right now where our country sits, we're facing some critical issues. And I think the type of leadership we need in Washington is what I demonstrated when I was in Tallahassee, and that is having the courage to say what needs to be said and do what needs to be done, even when issues aren't very popular. And right now we have some tough issues to face of getting the economy turned around. We need to address our spending problems. We need to reform our entitlement system. We need to transform our national security policy into one based on peace through strength. And so we need people who are going to tell it like it is. And I think that's what I did in Tallahassee. And I'm prepared to go to Washington to do that, to turn our country around.
And it was 8 years in Tallahassee, not 6, as I said. You're firing away at your main opponents. You called George Lemieux a reinvented Republican and compared Senate President Mike Herodopoulos to Democratic Senate Leader Harry Reid. What about this Ronald Reagan rule of not criticizing your fellow Republicans?
Well, I think what's most important is our campaign is going to be based on the issues. I want to talk about the challenges that we face in our country. But when there's a time for contrasting myself with my opponents or when I'm attacked, we're certainly going to respond. But I think we're going to stay focused on the tough issues that we face and, more importantly, the solutions that we have to provide in order to get going in the right direction.
Do you think Bill Nelson is vulnerable right now?
Well, I think what Bill Nelson's problem has been is he's been the biggest cheerleader for the Barack Obama agenda. He has supported the stimulus that hasn't worked to create jobs. He supported Obamacare, which we know is going to reduce the quality of health care and access to health care. He has supported cap and trade and card check, which are job-killing policies. And so as people learn more about Bill Nelson's record, he's going to be vulnerable because the people I'm talking to want America to go in a different direction. They don't want somebody who's going to be a cheerleader for the Obama agenda. They want someone who's going to fight for Florida and fight to create jobs here in our country.
Democrats, though, are crowing, saying that their secret weapon in the next election is actually Rick Scott, who has some of the lowest approval numbers ever of a governor. I asked you off camera, and you would have liked to have been a state legislator under Rick Scott, so I'm sure you support him and his policies.
Well, I think what's most important to remember is that popularity ratings don't really tell the whole story. Charlie Crist had a 70% approval rating when he was governor, and I did not think that he was a successful governor in terms of driving the types of policies that we needed in Florida. I think Governor Scott, what he's been able to accomplish is exactly what he said he was going to do on the campaign trail, and I think that's what I present in this campaign, and I think it's what people are looking for. Tell it like it is and go up there and get the job done, because it hasn't just been Democrats that have caused the problems. Republicans share in the blame, and people are just looking for people who are going to tell it like it is. They've said enough is enough.
Right, and they did elect him, and he was this outsider who was elected. So where is the disconnect if now people are saying, whoa, we put him in office and he's not doing what we thought he would do, is what some of these polls were indicating.
Well, again, looking at the polls, I don't think tells the whole story. I think what's most important is for Governor Scott and even for Republicans in Washington is to be more on offense. Republicans have allowed too often the Democrats to define the issues and define the narrative. I think what we need to do is be more aggressive and assertive on the types of reforms that we need to make, like in Washington, for example, saving Medicare, cutting spending, and balancing the budget. And I think we need to be more aggressive and be on offense.
Speaking of Medicare, certainly one of the major issues, if not the major issue right now, one of the Republican plans does call for changing it significantly for those 54 and under and turning this into a subsidy, and that the retirees will go and find their own insurance plan. The Congressional Budget Office has said the plan would be more expensive for these retirees. How are you going to sell this to people that you want to vote for you?
Well, I think what's first most important is to tell people exactly what you said. Medicare is going bankrupt. It's not spin on the Republican side or Democrat downside. The Medicare trustee report said in 2024, the trust fund is going to go insolvent. We need to transform into an affordable system. Medicare inflation right now is at unsustainable rates of 7%. We can't balance the budget unless we restructure the promise of Medicare, and that's why the Ryan plan, which I support and I believe is the only serious plan out there to address this out of control entitlement spending, is the one that we need to do a better job of educating people on, and we need to give them ways and options to save money so that they can then use that money to help defer some of the costs. But it's going to be a guaranteed access program. No one is going to lose their Medicare, and I think we need to do a better job of reminding people it's going bankrupt and our plan is to save it.
And I think some are saying, okay, you're going to balance the budget on the backs of some of the most vulnerable people, and certainly a large group of people in this state.
Well, remember, Florida has the highest Medicare population in the country, but what that also means is that if Medicare goes bankrupt because people are unwilling to address this issue, Floridians and Florida seniors have the most to lose. And it's not just going to collapse on the people who are currently receiving benefits. What's going to happen is that future generations are going to be burdened with higher taxes, with a lower standard and quality of living, and a loss of personal freedoms from the higher taxes. And so it's important for us to remind people it is going bankrupt. The president's plan through Obamacare is to create a panel of unelected bureaucrats to ration choices on health care. Our plan is to give people more options, very similar to the plan that members of Congress have, where they're given an amount of money and given many options to choose from. And I think we just need to remind people that a more patient-centered system is going to reduce costs and it's going to increase the quality of care.
On your website, you describe yourself as a strong conservative, and yet the Christian Coalition gave you an F grade for supporting the expansion of casino gambling, also for opposing parental notification of teens who are seeking an abortion. What do you say about that Christian Coalition grade?
Well, the Christian Coalition grade was actually based on a year when we had a difference of opinion, and the way that they graded was a little bit quirky, and the votes were related simply to gaming. It was the lottery and card rooms and dominoes. But I'm proud of my record on life issues and on family issues. Proud to have the endorsements of key conservatives around the country like Eric Erickson and Ken Blackwell, and I'm pro-life and pro-family, and certainly that 1 year was a little bit different than the years that I got 100% from the Christian Coalition and actually 2 times won the Faith and Family Award.
You told a Tea Party gathering last month, quote, "Today there is an enemy, and that enemy has a name and a defined mission. That enemy is Sharia-compliant Islam." Why do you think Sharia law might be a threat to Florida and to the United States?
Well, first and foremost, the tenets of Sharia law, which don't recognize women's rights or others' rights, has been insinuated in 50 court cases in 23 states. So it is a threat, and it's not compatible with the tenets of our Constitution in terms of free speech and otherwise. And the other risk that we face too is we just saw recently in Miami, we had 2 imams from a mosque in Miami who were indicted for funneling money to Pakistan to train jihadists to kill Americans. And so this isn't just a threat on foreign soil. This is also a threat right here within our own country. I live in Boca Raton. We remember the 9/11 terrorists. 3 of them lived in Delray Beach. We need to be aware, and we need to understand that there are people here who seek to destroy us and seek to destroy our way of life.
But you really think that Sharia law could take hold and supersede American law? I mean, I think a lot of people look at this and go, okay, this is a bunch of fear-mongering.
Well, it's certainly not fear-mongering. We saw the court case, for example, in New Jersey, where a judge actually didn't allow a woman a restraining order from her husband when he was raping her. And it was because the judge said that pursuant to his Islamic beliefs that he would not be raping her because they were married. I think that's an example where women's groups should be very concerned. It was ultimately overturned on appeal.
Exactly.
But nonetheless, the Sharia tenets of Sharia law were insinuated into an American court in New Jersey. It's happening all across the country, and I think it's just something that people need to be aware about, because it's not just a national security threat, it's a domestic one as well.
Wouldn't that apply, though, to Orthodox Jews and to certain Christian groups as well, that there might be certain religious views and laws that you know?
But again, those principles are not not in conflict with our constitutional principles. And that's what we've seen. We saw a judge in Tampa just recently say that he was going to base a decision on ecclesiastical Islamic law. So it's a concern, and it's something that I think people need to be aware about.
What is the biggest issue, do you think, though, facing Florida right now?
I think the biggest issue is jobs. I think most importantly, it's about how do we get our economy going again. The Obama administration and Senator Nelson's policies of bigger government and more deficit spending are taking us in the wrong direction. What we need to be able to do is cut spending in Washington, balance the budget, reform entitlements. We're going to have to deal with the debt limit issue as well so that we can continue to create jobs. And then regulations. We see stifling job killing regulations coming out of this administration.
And here's your freebie. So why are you better at addressing those issues than any of your opponents and Senator Bill Nelson?
Well, what's most important is I've demonstrated during my time in Tallahassee that I'm going to stand up not just to Democrats on the important issues of the day, but that I'm willing to take on those within my own party who stray from the principles that I think are so important for creating jobs, restoring fiscal health in our country, and more importantly, of restoring America's prominence on the global stage through a peace through strength national security policy.
Adam Hasner, thank you very much for being with us. It's going to be an interesting long race to cover.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Coming up next, our roundtable and what Republicans could be a Democratic candidate for governor. Time now for our roundtable, and joining me this morning is Tony Doris, a political editor with the Palm Beach Post, and Brian Crowley of the CrowleyPoliticalReport.com. Actually, it's not the Crowley Political Report. Drop the "the." All right, nice to have you with us, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Who would like to react first to what Adam Hasner had to say this morning?
Well, I think Adam is a very serious candidate. I think all three of the candidates in this race, George Lemieux, Mike Herodopoulos, and Adam Hasner, are all very serious contenders. Frankly, at this point in their campaign, it's really a money race. Who's going to raise the most amount of money? And we'll know that as we get to the end of this month and get to the July reports on how well they've done raising money. But Adam, I think, also is pushing really hard to be the candidate of the three who's the furthest to the right. And I think you saw that in some of the answers he gave.
They're all pushing to be the candidate who's the furthest to the right. In fact, when you tried to get him to say how does he distinguish himself from the others, that's the point that didn't come across, he just wants to be a conservative candidate with all the values that we've traditionally seen in Florida and in the State House. Didn't see much difference.
And does that just show the strength of the Tea Party? Is that why everyone is jockeying to be the...
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that's what it is, right?
They're not really looking for votes in the Republican Party. They're looking for votes among Tea Party activists and other hardcore conservative activists, because generally speaking in the primary, that's who goes and votes. Moderate Republicans need not apply at this point. And you know, the way
Charlie
the Republican
Crist being a
leadership,
case in point.
Exactly, and the way the Republican leadership, starting with Rick Scott, had been spending so much time with the Tea Party, I mean, it almost makes the Republican mainstream party irrelevant in Florida.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't know that there is a Republican mainstream party. Moderate is not a good thing to be right now. But things might change after the primaries are over and they've got to face a Democrat, and it's not quite so simple.
Well, speaking of the Democrats, the Florida Democrats held their big meeting last weekend, trying to talk about how they're going to win some statewide races. So what can they do at this point?
Today, not much. I mean, the next time that they have a reasonable shot on the ballot outside of Bill Nelson trying to hold on to his seat in the U.S. Senate race is, you know, in 3 years when we start the next campaign for governor and cabinet races and other races. I mean, the Democratic Party is right now in a building phase. I mean, they got slaughtered in the last election. It could not have been any worse for them. They lost every statewide race. They've lost most of their seats in the House and the Senate in Florida. They really need to find some new faces to really concentrate on raising some money and building this party for the next, for the 4 years from now.
But as you said, they've got an easy shot right now with Governor Scott going down and down and down in the popularity ratings. They don't even need to say what they stand for or announce their names yet. They just need to point to him and say, hey, we're not him.
And what about this possibility of Charlie Crist entering the race for governor as a Democrat?
Well, it's so early to be talking about the governor's race in 3 years, but it probably says more about the desperation of the Democratic Party and the fact that they look at the folks that they've already got there and they don't see anybody that has, Alex Sink couldn't quite get there. I know she's thinking about running again, but I still think it says more about the desperation of the Democratic Party than it says about Charlie Crist.
Alex Sink is saying, well, I got 48, 49% of the vote, so was it cup half full, half empty? With Scott unpopular right now, why not her? She's got more name recognition than the others. I think, you know, maybe frankly the media picked up on the Charlie Crist possibility, or one or two papers did, because he's just a name that people know. And he's gone so far to moderate that maybe people would say, why not keep going?
All right. Well, the presidential campaigns come to South Florida. We're going to be tackling that coming up next. President Obama made his first official campaign trip to Florida last week, stopping in Miami for some fundraisers and to fire up his supporters. And one of the leading Republican candidates, Mitt Romney, was in Boca Raton for a fundraiser. We see plenty of pictures of the president, none of Mitt Romney, because he tended to stay away from photographers and from interviews. What's the differences in these media strategies here? Why wouldn't he do interviews? I know he turned us down for one.
Well, I think right now it's just he's raising money, raising money, raising money, raising money. He went to a series of cities around the state and raised money, so it was one right after another. And then, of course, he had to spend his time in New Hampshire as much as he can to hang on there.
Against an incumbent who's got lots of money, and right now he hasn't distinguished himself, broken away from the crowd quite enough, so why not?
And you know, while the president had 3 fundraisers while he was in Miami, but I would also, and while he got the kind of media attention that a president gets when he has a big event at a convention center, the president has not spent a lot of time in Florida since his election. He has not spent a lot of time here just mingling with the folk. And I really think that Floridians, and Florida is going to be vital to his reelection. I don't think Floridians have had that touchy-feely response with President Obama. But I'm looking at the last couple of years that he's been in office. There hasn't been a lot of effort to spend time in Florida and some other key states around the country.
Yeah, that could have
outside of raising money.
Has Mitt Romney identified himself, do you think, as the front runner? I mean, name recognition and all of that. Certainly, he's in name recognition. I would think he's out in front. Do you think he's
got
doing
some
enough?
key fundraisers, especially in South Florida. The party he went to was sponsored by a few very well-known names, a couple of former ambassadors who were big fundraisers to the Republican Party, a couple of big industrialists. So that's if what he's looking to do now is raise money and get the recognition. He's getting the recognition from where the money is.
His finance team in Florida, a lot of them are these George Bush Rangers, who were the big money guys for George Bush. So Ambassador Siegel, who in Boca Raton, Mel Sembler, and a whole host of these guys that were big, like as I said, fundraisers for George Bush are helping out Romney. So that's a big help to him in this state. He's raised $40 million, so by that number alone, he's the front runner right now. But he did really well the last time out too, and crumbled when it counted. So. And
how much the Democrats have sitting in a pile right now, just waiting, and Obama, a lot left over from
they'll
last
have. Obama's campaign has been talking about $1 billion campaign, so it's going to be impressive.
How much of a must-win is Florida for? Obviously, we've already said it is for President Obama, but for Mitt Romney.
Probably even more so.
Yeah.
29 electoral votes. You're not going to be president without winning Florida. There are too many other states you have to pick up in order to get those 29 electoral votes. So Florida and obviously a few other key states, but Florida is just it for these guys.
Yeah. As far as the Republican Party goes, is there an inordinate amount of pressure being put on Mitt Romney to win the primary, do you think? I mean, do you think he is the one that they won out there in front, although I think Michelle Bachmann did? She seemed to get a lot of attention the other night at the up in New Hampshire.
There's pressure from every one of them to break loose from the pack right now. It's still a pack. 7 of them standing there, and public recognition of any one of them could go up, down. Nobody's really way out in front. So.
Were you impressed with Bachmann the other night?
I thought Bachmann did a really good job, and in fact, on Crowley Political Report, I suggested that she could win the Florida presidential primary. The reason for that is if you look at where the U.S. Senate candidates are going, hard right, Tea Party, she's the leader of the Tea Party caucus in Congress. Those are the people that she appeals to the most. And that's the direction that this U.S. Senate campaign is going in on the Republican side. And those are her voters. And Mitt Romney is not, you know, they don't like Mitt Romney. They're very suspicious of Mitt Romney. So if Michelle Bachmann can put together a good team and raise enough money, and I suspect she will, I think by the time the Florida primary rolls around early next year, she could win.
And will that keep Sarah Palin out?
Well, that's
out of the
thing.
race?
If she's too closely identified with Sarah Palin, then maybe that pulls away from her and people look for a candidate that has even more gravitas.
Right. All right, we'll be back in just a moment. Stay with us. Time for some closing comments. We'll begin with Tony Doris.
It looks like we've got a lot of traditional values, traditional conservative values being sold to the voters. That's what Florida has bought in the past, and that's what everybody is trying to sell more and more of right now. Each candidate is trying to go as far to the right as they can in that direction. So we'll see right now. It's still too early to tell.
And the Crowley closer?
Well, we've already talked about on this program how the race between Lois Frankel and Adam West would get ugly. And last week we had Lois Frankel's rival on, Patrick Murphy, in the Democratic primary. Well, it's already starting to get ugly between Frankel and West. Somebody for West has filed an FEC complaint against Lois Frankel, accusing her of buying things for her campaign before she had filed properly. So it's already starting to get ugly. I'm sure the next thing we'll hear is that they're blaming Lois for the water shortage in West Palm Beach.
Always plenty to talk about, no matter what race we're dealing with that day. Thank you very much, Brian Crowley, Tony Doris, for being with us today. We appreciate your time as well. And thank you for joining us. Hope you'll tune in next Sunday morning for To The Point. If you have a comment, just send it to WPTV.com and click on the political link. Enjoy the rest of your day.